Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to the session in the Target Prelims 2023 initiative. And in today's session, let's have a discussion regarding the strategy that you're supposed to follow to prepare for Indian economy in the next 90 days or whatever the number of days which are left out, less than 90 days. But before I tell you what strategy you're supposed to follow, a very important announcement. One, I'm pretty sure all of you know that we have started the Target Prelims 2023 initiative from 1st of March 2023, and under this we are going to have 4 phases. In the phase 1, we are discussing the strategy that you're supposed to follow for each of the subject. For the subjects such as polity, current affairs, the videos are already there. They were conducted live. If you have not yet seen, please visit our BYJU'S Exam Prep YouTube channel. You will get the strategy videos. For remaining, you will have to wait. These have been scheduled. So this is going to take place in the phase 1, and this is conducted live every day 8 to 9 for the next couple of days on YouTube. Second phase will be conducted on the app, wherein more than 400 topics which are relevant, which have appeared in various stages or let's say various months in the last 1 year, they have been collected, and there will be a discussion on all these more than 400 topics, but that will be conducted on the app, BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS app, and again it is live. The third phase will be MCQ based discussion. This will be again live but on YouTube, wherein we are going to cover more than 600 MCQs, including even the previous year questions. And this will be done live on YouTube, starting from 15th of April to 15th of May. And the fourth stage, or one more part of this program that we have launched for you is basically All India Prelims 2023 Open Mock Test, which will go live starting 23rd April. So these are the 4 components of the Target Prelims 2023 initiative that we have basically programmed for you, or we have designed for you to get attested to the idea of civil service examination and help you in getting through the preliminary examination. Now, all of this is absolutely free. You do not have to pay any money to us. All that we want or expect from your side is 1. Subscribe to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Hit the like button to all these videos that you are basically using now, or you will view in the coming days. And download the BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS and register for this. Now, first part of this program, as already mentioned, it is strategy series. We are going to discuss what should be the strategy you should follow to prepare for all these papers, or let's say subjects, in the next 80 plus days. As mentioned already, the polity is done. Current affairs is also done. It was done yesterday itself. Today is the 3rd day. We are discussing economic strategy. And tomorrow there will be a strategy session on geography, followed by ecology and environment and science and technology, and finally strategy for the subject of history. So this is a schedule. Please make a note of this. If you do not want to keep a track of everything, subscribe, hit the bell icon, so that whenever these sessions will go live, you will be given the intimation by YouTube itself. So with this caveat, let me start the discussion now. What should be the strategy that you're supposed to follow for, let's say, next 80 plus days for you to ace this examination? And specifically within this, what should be the strategy for Indian economy? First and foremost, for those of you who are still under the doubt, UPSC doesn't say economics, it says Indian economy. That is, many of you will have this doubt. Sir, what is economics? What is economy? Simple. A structure or a model of a country is called as economy. We'll say Indian economy, Pakistan economy, Sri Lankan economy, UK's economy, American economy. So the questions which are going to be asked, most of them will be on Indian economy itself. You do not have to have a PhD degree to write this exam in economics. That's point number 1. Second point, I'm pretty sure all of you know this by now. Like most of the subjects, even the Indian economy is divided into two parts. One is the static part and the second one is the dynamic part. What is this dynamic part? In simple terms, the current affairs. Now let me start with the static part here. Just to give you a glimpse, just to give a very basic idea, this is one of the books that many of the students use for Indian economy. Now again, don't say, sir, is this the only book that I'm supposed to read? Absolutely no. Why I'm showing this book? Please have a look at the size of the book. Just for reference, the number of pages in this book is 780 plus. More than 780 pages are there in the book. And you have somewhere over 80 days for your civil services examination, that is preliminary examination. So simple question to you. Many of you have started asking me already, sir, should I read a book now? You tell me, 700 plus pages, 80 plus days. Do you think that is feasible to read a book? Right, so understand my point very carefully. Do not start reading a book now. Even if you have not read the book, please don't read the book right now. You will not be able to, one, finish the book. Second, you will come under a lot of pressure because you are supposed to read many other subjects as well. Indian economy is one part of it. Agreed. Generally the trend, if you ask me, sir, why should I read Indian economy in the first place? The trend is very simple. Generally around 15 questions. In 1 year it could be 18. In another year it could be 13. In another year it could be 19. Another year it could be 16 as well. So on an average, generally around 15 questions appear from Indian economy. Now this I can basically divide into two components. One is the static part, second one is the dynamic or current affairs part. Let me start with the static part. If you see the mains syllabus, prelims, there is no syllabus prescribed for Indian economy. But if you look at the main syllabus, various components are given. For example, agriculture, right? For example, national growth or development, inclusive growth, infrastructure, etc. are provided. Should you read all these topics for the examination, that is preliminary examination now? Answer is simply no. What I would recommend to you people is, if you have already done it, let's say once or twice, if you have already revised the static portion once or twice, well and good. Now please do not focus on the complete static portion. Please do not focus on it. Why? You can generally divide this static portion into two parts. That is one which will appear in prelims and mains, and the other one which will appear only in mains. Can I give you some examples here? If you have seen the questions which have been asked on the concept of inclusive growth. By the way, inclusive growth is actually mentioned in the mains syllabus. If you look at the concept related to inclusive growth, or I'll give you one more example, food processing. Please check where the questions have appeared in the last 5 years. Either you can take last 5 years or last 7 years, since the change in the system or change in the pattern that was introduced, or even you want to take it from 2011, I don't have any problem. What you will observe is simply this. You will not find questions on these concepts in the preliminary examination. You will never find these questions or questions on these topics. But on the other hand, if you take up topics such as fiscal policy, these are very, very important. If you take up topics such as fiscal policy, monetary policy, international trade, agriculture sector, GDP, inflation, etc. Now just try to find out. Again, don't do this now. It's waste of your time. Please don't do this. I've already done the analysis. I'm telling you the result. What you'll observe is very simple. Out of, let's say, 15 questions which on average have come in the Civil Services Preliminary examination, somewhere around 11 to 12 questions will be from these areas itself. Is it okay? Am I being very clear to you? If you take up, let's say, on an average 15 questions, on an average, around 11 to 12 questions, or even for that matter 13 questions sometimes, will come from these areas itself. That is GDP, inflation, fiscal policy, monetary policy, international trade, agriculture sector, etc. Now within this also, if you ask me, sir, right, which is the important area? For example, take up monetary policy. Just take the example of monetary policy. Within monetary policy, there are so many segments. For example, the most important one within this is Reserve Bank of India. RBI, Reserve Bank of India. Now pick up any year's question paper, last 10 years, last 15 years. Pick up any year's question paper, guaranteed there will be at least one question asked on the concept of RBI in the preliminary examination. And the beauty, at least the trend, the beauty has been that these questions on the banking sector, generally around 3 to 4 will come in the prelims. Around 3 to 4. It could be more than that also in some of the years. But if you look at the mains paper, there is not even a single question on the concept of core of RBI, Reserve Bank of India. Not even one question. Right? Generally, questions related to other activities done by RBI, yes, they have been asked. For example, in 1 year, there was a question on inflation. Yes, RBI plays a very, very important role in inflation. No doubt. But specifically on RBI, no question was asked. But pick up the preliminary question papers, you will see that lot of questions have come from the concept of banking itself. Done? So these are certain very, very important areas which I would simply say focus on these areas. Focus on these areas. You do not have to read any one book completely now. It's waste of your time. Do not take up a new book. Don't start reading now. Because you listen to someone else. They said this book is useless. In fact, I read that book and last year many questions had come from that book. Now you'll stop reading one of the books and you'll pick up another book. And trust me when I say this, Indian economy books are not very small. These are not small books. For example, if you talk about Nitin Singhania book, the number of pages are more than 780. Sir, I will read Ramesh Singh then. Number of pages are 730. So somebody recommended Sanjeev Verma book to me, 430 pages. Do you think you will be able to finish these books within, let's say, next 80 days along with many other subjects? It's not possible. Please don't waste your time. Even if you have one book and assume, let's say, you have read it once or twice already. If not, focus on these areas now. Focus on these areas. Because one, Indian economy, as I mentioned, it is one of the subject, not the only subject that you need to prepare for. There is polity, there is ecology and environment, science and technology, right? There is international relations, there is geography. You'll have to focus on these other areas as well. Because ultimately at the end of the day, when you write that exam, you'll have to score at least 100 marks. And you will not get 100 marks if you become a PhD scholar only in Indian economy. So please don't waste your time. Do not take up a bigger book. Do not start downloading material from IGNO because some topper said, and start reading those things, and now it's waste of your time. Sir, what should I do then? If you are focused on, let's say, limited number of days, these are the number of hours, I want to get the maximum output, my recommendation is these are the topics for you. These are the topics. Now this is taking care of the static portion. What about the dynamic portion? Current affairs. For prelims examination, what I would recommend is, please read current affairs for at least, underline the term, at least 12 months. At least 12 months. Right, sir, what do you mean by that? May, right, May 28th is the examination date. Right, before that, 12 months prior to that, right, somewhere in the month of April 2022. So starting from April 2022 till, let's say, beginning of May, assuming the question paper is finalized in the first week of May. So that would be my window for preparation of current affairs. Now some of you will simply say, sir, current affairs is so much. There is so much information in the current affairs. How much should I remember? How much should I study? Etc. First and foremost, these topics which I've already listed, you will have to read current affairs on these topics. Right? Don't make a mistake by not reading these topics in static as well as current affairs. Please read that. Point number 1. In addition to these, there are other important current affairs points also which very often you will come across. Please make a note of it. For example, sir, what do you mean by that? For example, there will be a discussion in the last couple of months on the concept of IMF, International Monetary Fund, IMF. Please don't miss the discussion on that. Why? There has been a lot of discussion regarding IMF in the context of Pakistan, in the context of Sri Lanka. And already last year the question on IMF has already been asked. It was a straightforward question based on current affairs. It has already been asked. But do not take a chance. There is generally a possibility of question again coming on IMF because it was there on the current affairs. Sir, is only IMF important? Of course no. Of course, absolutely no. There are so many other international agencies that would become very much relevant. For example, I'm pretty sure all of you heard of SWIFT. Concept of SWIFT. Again, I'm not talking about SWIFT car. Don't say, sir, is SWIFT car relevant for civil services? Absolutely no. Absolutely no. The idea of a SWIFT, right, basically it's a cooperative, international cooperative, right, which will facilitate international financial telecommunications, right. That's basically a long form of SWIFT itself. That was relevant in the context of Russia-Ukraine war. You should read about it. So that's the reason I'm saying, please be careful, right. You will have to read at least 12 months current affairs. Sir, what do you mean by at least? If you can go beyond 12 months, I would be very, very happy. Is the logic okay? Right? If you can go beyond 12 months, I will be very, very happy. And within this 12 months also, should I prioritize these current affairs? Yes, of course, yes. Please prioritize those current affairs which are relevant to Reserve Bank of India, which are relevant to taxation system. Because some of you are saying, sir, you have not written taxation. My dear, taxation is a part of fiscal policy itself. Finance Commission, taxation, vertical devolution, horizontal devolution, the cesses, surcharges, etc., etc., etc. And all these are relevant. Because if you have been reading the newspapers in the last 1 month itself, how many times the concept of cesses has appeared in the newspaper? Where the state governments are alleging that the central government is imposing more and more cesses and they are basically snatching away the taxation powers or tax devolution that the states are supposed to receive. So suddenly UPSC might look at it and say, okay, I'll ask a question on this. This is relevant, I'll ask a question on this. So point number 1, these are the very important areas in both static as well as dynamic. At least the last 12 months current affairs, you should be aware of it. Point number 2, even in last 12 months when I read current affairs, should I focus on anything else? Under that, first one is international organizations like this. Focus on it. Second, are there any committees which are there in the discussion? Simple. Are there any committees which are there in the discussion very often cited in the newspaper which are relevant to last 1 year? Of course, yes. Because please understand, even when you are reading Indian economy, you would have come across this problem. Sir, there are so many committees. How do I remember? Very valid question. Every year Government of India will set up so many committees. How do I remember it? It becomes very difficult for me. In that case, this is my recommendation. In the last 1 year, has any committee appeared in the newspaper? Focus on it. Can I give you some examples here? What about inflation targeting? That was very often cited in the newspaper. Inflation targeting. Monetary Policy Framework Agreement has been signed between Reserve Bank of India and the Government of India. Which committee has recommended this agreement? Question can be asked on it. Because it has not been asked so far. And the concept of inflation targeting was actually there in the newspaper. It was there in the newspaper. So please be very careful. Right, so which committee recommended it? Point number 1. And by the way, it is Urjit Patel committee. Second, Government of India was expected to restructure special economic zones, SEZs. Is there any committee which has recommended restructuring of special economic zones? Can be asked. Reserve Bank of India has come out with scale-based regulation for cooperative banking. Is it okay? For cooperatives, there is NBFCs. For NBFCs, there is a scale-based regulation that RBI has introduced. Is there a committee which recommended it? Right, so these are the kind of questions which can be asked by UPSC, and again, these are very simple questions because it was there in the current affairs. UPSC will pick it up and ask you. And these are so simple in the sense either you know them or you don't know them. Many of the times, right, you will be confused there. These are very simple questions. And that's the reason again I'm telling you people, focus in the last 1 year. Focus in the last 1 year because I hope you understand this. There is very limited storage capacity that you people have at the top and I have at the top. What I will put into that storage capacity, it matters a lot. It's a fact that from 1945 itself, a lot of committees have been set up in India. Even before independence, committees have been there in India, related to economics, by the way. Will you be able to remember all of them? And even if you remember all of them, will you be able to recollect them correctly during the exams? Right, because today you are sitting without any pressure of that examination and you might simply come to a conclusion, yes sir, it's very easy for me. I can easily recollect, but that added pressure is not there today. So that's a reason, think of it. How do you optimize then? How do you make it much more efficient? Try to focus in the last 1 year, anything that has come in the newspaper regarding this. Is there any committee associated with this? Try to read. Try to by heart remember those committees. Next, schemes. Important. Next one is schemes. Hundreds of schemes are introduced by the government every year. Hundreds of them are introduced. Again, question arises, sir, how do I remember? Argument is simple. Anything that has been there in the discussion in the last 1 year. And focus on those if it has appeared again in the budget announcement. Simple. Right, in the last 1 year and again in the budget announcement. And whenever you read about the schemes related to Indian economy, for example, very recently one of the scheme, production linked incentives, was there in the newspaper. It has been introduced for many years now and so far no question has appeared on it. Right, which means probability of question being asked on this automatically becomes very high. One more scheme, FAME, FAME scheme. FAME 1 was introduced from 2014 till 2019. Now, from 2019, it was supposed to be implemented till 2022. It has been extended till 2024. It was also there in the newspaper. Right, so there are a lot of these schemes which are being implemented by the government. Now the question is, should you remember all the schemes? It's not possible. Again, I'm not challenging you. Please don't take it as a challenge and say that, sir, in that case, I will read every scheme. All the best. Please do not waste your time. Use it very efficiently. In the last 1 year, which schemes have come? Point number 1. And within this, what are you supposed to read? Even on the schemes, what are you supposed to read? These are the important pointers. Remember these, it should be more than sufficient. Point number 1. From which year it has come into force? From which year this scheme has come into force, that is under implementation. Second, which is the nodal ministry? Which is the nodal ministry? Nodal ministry means which is the authority which is supposed to implement the scheme. Third, is it only a central sector scheme or it is a centrally sponsored scheme? Is it only a central sector scheme or is it a centrally sponsored scheme? Very relevant questions have been asked. And finally, what are the important objectives? What are the important objectives? What is the government of India trying to achieve with this kind of a scheme when they have started to implement it? If you can focus on these 4 parameters, remember these 4 parameters for all these schemes, right? Again, I hope you understand this. Suddenly a statement that you have not read on the scheme might appear in the exam, right? There is always a possibility. But whenever such questions are provided, there is also a window where you can use elimination method, because out of 3 statements, you know one of them is correct. Use the elimination method, get the answer. Get the answers for it. Right? So that is how you are supposed to approach the static portion as well as the dynamic portion. This is syllabus, part of the preparation, syllabus. Next what? Please have a look at the previous year questions. Please have a glance through previous year questions. You will get a very good idea of what kind of questions civil services so far has been focused on. And having looked at it, appear for as many test series as possible now. Solve as many papers as possible. This is the right occasion, right time for you people. Whatever marks you are going to score, please don't worry about it. Please do not worry about it. But once you are done with the paper, please analyze the paper. Analyze the paper. Right? Because many of the times you think your analysis is correct while solving the question. But what could be the right argument, you are missing that. You will get it when you look at the analysis or the answer for that question. Right? So that is the reason, solve question papers and do the analysis. Then you will understand, okay, maybe your preparation is lagging in this chapter. You are right, you are very much comfortable with one more chapter like this. So these are some of the things that you will have to do. You will have to do for the next, right, let's say 2.5 months to ace, right, the examination specifically from Indian economy perspective. Are there any steps that you are not supposed to take? Right, because understand the point here. It's not just sufficient that you know what to read, how to read. It's also equally important to understand what you are not supposed to do for the next 2.5 months. One, as already mentioned, do not try to read any book from first page to last page now. Waste of your time. You will not be able to do that. Please don't go for adventurism, not advisable. Please do not read the book from first page to last page. Sometimes, and this is a fact, what these books do is, they will put lot of content so that the size of the book increases. It's very simple. Size of the book should be higher, because imagine a situation, you will go to the shop, you will pay, let's say 600 or 700 bucks and purchase an Indian economy book. Now you tell me, what if the shopkeeper gives you 100 pages book? Will you be satisfied with it? He will give you 200 pages book. Will you be satisfied? You will become economist there. That is, you will calculate 100 pages. I have paid 500 rupees. You will do the calculation and say, for every page I am paying 5 rupees. This book is not worth. Rather, I will get photocopied. Or your conclusion is, only 100 pages means, right, all the information will not be there in the book. On the other hand, if I give you 1000 pages, now your calculation is 500 rupees, 1000 pages. For every rupee I am getting 2 pages, which means there is a worth of the book. Right? The book is worth it. But tell me, only for Indian economy will you be able to read 1000 pages? Will you be able to read 1000 pages? Point number 1. Second point, even if you read 1000 pages, right, is it relevant for service examination? How many of you have thought of it like that? Is it relevant for UPSC or for that matter any examination? Absolutely no. So 1, please do not read the book from point or page number 1 to page number X. Not advisable. Second, only one source for static. Simple. Only one source for static. Please don't read multiple sources. It doesn't help you. Why? You tell me, what is the definition of GDP? Do you think it will vary from one book to another book? Do you think, right, you have more knowledge because you have read the GDP definition twice? Absolutely no. Absolutely no. Right? You have the same knowledge as the next person who has basically by-hearted the definition of GDP. So that's the reason more than one static source not advisable. You want to read more? Then here is a full playground for you. Dynamic sources, current affairs. More you read, more that is advisable. I would simply advise, rather than reading more static sources, or let's say more than one static source, please read more of these dynamic sources. And again, don't say, sir, any suggestion. Obviously, I would recommend BYJU'S Exam Prep magazine. But, sir, I don't want to read. I don't want to read this. I don't want to read that. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I hope you understand, at the end of the day, whether you know the answer or not, that is what matters. From which source you have got, absolutely no. It doesn't matter. Right? UPSC will not give you more marks if you write our source. Absolutely no. Right? So, from what source you are going to read, doesn't matter as long as you read. And more importantly, revision. Coming to the last point here. More importantly, the concept of revision. My recommendation is try to revise it as much as possible. At least these topics. Including current affairs, fiscal policy, monetary policy, GDP, inflation, international trade. And when I say international trade, not just trade. I hope you understand this. Or let me make it much more clear to you. Rather than using the term international trade, I'll say international economics. International economics. Sir, what do you mean by this? I've never heard international economics. Balance of payments. Simple balance of payments. Trade policies. Economic integration. WTO. Right? So, even that concept of exchange rate. These are the 5 areas that I would strongly recommend you cover under the concept of international economics. Right? And then agriculture sector. Right? So, these are the very, very important areas. Current affairs, static, keep on revising. Now, many of you will ask me, sir, how do I revise? How do I revise? These are very, very big chapters. How do I revise? My suggestion to you people is, it will be slightly hard in the beginning, but take 1 or 2 days, make mind maps like this. Simple. Take 1 or 2 days. Again, I'm saying it's not easy. And by no means, the preparation should be easy for you. You should study hard, study smart. Only then you will be able to enjoy the fruits of the success. Right? So 1 or 2 days, it is going to be slightly hard for you. But once you prepare these mind maps, it will hardly take, let's say, 10 minutes every day to revise 1 chapter for Indian economy. Hardly 10 minutes. What is the mind map that I've given for you people here? Simple. I've taken one of the chapter that I have recommended to you people. That is the chapter of inflation. And this is important. Inflation, by the way, is important. Right? Now, what I've done in the mind map, I've covered certain static concepts which are relevant for Civil Services Preliminary examination and certain current affairs which are anyways relevant, which are important for preliminary examination. What I would recommend is make mind maps like this for every chapter. Fiscal policy, taxation, make 1 mind map like this. GDP, gross domestic product, make 1 mind map. Right? Let's say exchange rate, make 1 mind map. You will have, let's say, hardly of all the topics that I've mentioned earlier, how many mind maps you will have? Hardly around 10 to 12 mind maps. So, within a span of, let's say, 10 to 12 minutes, first difficult stage is preparation of the map. But easier stage is revising these maps regularly. For example, inflation. Right? On one side, I've given all the static portion for you. If you look at all these, I've given the static portion for you. And if you look at the other side of the mind map, I've given the current affairs in the last couple of months itself. Again, I've not even covered 1 year. I've given from the last, right, 3 to 4 months itself. For example, static portion, what will I cover? What is inflation? How do we measure inflation? What is WPI? What is CPI? Right? Why both the numbers are generally different? What is the coverage under WPI? What is the coverage under CPI? Right? Then I've basically given you the concept of monetary policy framework agreement. What are the important provisions? Right? What is the 5-year duration now? 21 to 26. Then the basic idea of impact of inflation. If inflation is there, what is the problem? If inflation is there, is it required or not? How many of you know that inflation is actually required in the economy? Some of you will wonder now, sir, I always read that inflation is a problem. But now you are saying inflation is required. Is it correct? Of course, yes, inflation is needed in the economy. Otherwise, you tell me, why do you think, right? Why do you think RBI has given a target of 4%? I hope you understand this. Why do you think RBI has given a target of maintaining inflation rate at 4%? If inflation is such an evil, if inflation is so bad, why not 0% target? I hope you understand this, right? So there is a requirement of inflation, right? Of course, yes, there is a certain amount of inflation that is needed. What are the reasons? Please remember that, right? What is this idea of a flexible inflation targeting? Monetary Policy Framework Agreement, MPFA. Then there is a curve associated with inflation, Phillips curve. Then there is a concept of GDP deflator. Those who have read inflation, they will agree when I say the most comprehensive measurement of inflation is GDP deflator. I hope you understand this. The most comprehensive measurement of inflation is GDP deflator. So these are the static portions. Now what about the dynamic portions? Right? What about the dynamic portions? Imported inflation. Was it not there in the newspaper in the last 3 to 4 months? I'll tell you the context. Rupee depreciation. Rupee depreciation. Crude oil becoming very, very costlier. All these have led to imported inflation. What about cereal inflation? The wheat prices have gone up. The atta prices have gone up, causing cereal inflation. What about food inflation? Vegetable prices, cereal prices, all of them have led to food inflation. What has the government of India done? What has RBI done? Is RBI suitable to control food inflation? These are the kind of statements that UPSC can use. I hope you understand. These are the type of statements that UPSC can use in the preliminary examination. Then there is a proposal to set up price monitoring centers, PMCs across India. There is a price monitoring division, but there is a proposal to set up a center across India now. Essential Commodities Act, at various places it has been used, right? It has been used. Please remember that. Then there is a discussion of fodder inflation. Then there is also shrinkflation, stagflation. It's not written, but stagflation is also very much relevant now. UK is expected to have experienced with stagflation. The earlier Prime Minister or former Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh, stated that India is going through stagflation. So all these terminologies are very much relevant for you in case of the Civil Services Prelims examination. Not so much in mains. Not so much in mains, but prelims, this will be relevant. And whenever you're reading about inflation, at least for now, understand this. If you come across certain article, you come across certain discussion where they are trying to connect growth with inflation, right? Why inflation is contributing this, etc., etc. Skip it. Trust me, skip it now. Why? That is more of, let's say, a mains based discussion, not for a prelims based discussion. For example, I'll just quote the earlier examination, one of the questions. In the Civil Services mains examination, there is a question asked. Do you think the current situation of high growth and inflation has left the Indian economy in good shape? Elaborate. Now you're coming across an article which discusses this. Do you think that is relevant for Civil Services Prelims? Absolutely no. That is a concept which is relevant for mains. Skip it. So that is how you need to understand. That is how you need to understand, right, what to read, right, these topics. Within these topics, what to read. That's also very much relevant. Please remember that. So make mind maps like this. Again, I do agree. It's more work for you, but trust me when I say this, you try to do this. Try to do this for 1 or 2 chapters, then revise them once or twice, then evaluate yourself. Evaluate whether this mind map is working for you or not. If this technique is working, continue it. Do it for another 8 to 9 chapters. You can revise these chapters much easily in the coming days. If it is not working for you, skip this methodology, go back to whatever technique you were using earlier. Done? So this is basically some of the recommendations that I wanted to provide to you people regarding mind maps. Second, many of you are asking, sir, what about budget? What about economic survey? Is it required? Of course, yes. Of course, yes. I do agree in the last couple of years, the number of questions which have come from the budget and economic survey are very meager. In some of the years, they have not even touched budget and economic survey. But that doesn't mean that they are not going to ask you now. That doesn't mean that. So whatever is relevant within the budget, for example, within the budget, important announcements regarding, let's say, agriculture sector, important announcement to promote green growth in India, important announcements, right, in order to promote exports, etc., etc. Focus on them, right, have a look at them, revise them. Same thing regarding economic survey. Don't read economic survey, not at all relevant. Please don't read economic survey. Right, so what should I focus on? Important concepts which are there in economic survey. For example, whenever you read economic survey, or even if you have watched videos on economic survey, so you said don't read, but now you are saying whenever you read. So whenever you have watched a video on economic survey, generally there are certain important concepts which are discussed in those videos. For example, whenever they talk about international trade, they will discuss about remittances. Don't you think remittances are relevant for examination now? India for the first time is said to have crossed more than $100 billion remittances. And again, if you know that, you already know the fact that it is connected to international business or international trade that I was talking about earlier. It's connected to balance of payments. So that's a reason. That's a reason I'm saying, right, basically focus on these concepts. What has happened to import cover, etc. That is the utility of the budget as well as economic survey. And here itself, I just want to give you one more important point which you are not supposed to do. Do not by heart data. Many of you are asking me the question, sir, should I remember data? Should I by heart the data? Absolutely no. Absolutely no. Because if you just open up a budget document or let's say economic survey document, every page there is a table. Should you remember all these tables? It's not at all required. It's not at all required. Even for those students who are taking optional economics, we say, please don't by heart the tables. Not at all needed for the exams. And if you see the trend that has been asked, or the trend that has been followed by the civil services, they are not very interested in those people who by heart the data. And hence they have basically cut the questions which are generally asked in the form of data collection as such. It's not relevant for Indian economy GS paper 3, or for that matter the GS paper in the Civil Services Preliminary examination. Do not waste your time sitting and by hearting all this data point by point. Please don't waste your time. There are certain numbers which are relevant, which are no doubt, which are relevant. For example, the remittances. Don't you think that's relevant? Of course, yes. The merchandise exports in the last year, relevant. Why? There is a reason for it. For the first time ever, India's merchandise exports have crossed more than $400 billion. So don't you think that kind of a data is relevant for exams? The service exports have crossed more than $300 billion. Relevant. So that's the reason I'm saying there is certain data which is relevant for exams. Focus on that. There is a lot of data. It's basically part of noise. Skip it. Leave it. Do not by heart all of the data. Not at all relevant. Right? And in addition to this, whenever you are watching, let's say, budget or economic survey videos, not the book, not the document. These are very, very big documents. Just try to focus on trends. I do agree. I do agree when I talk about trends. I do agree. In the last 1 or 2 years, UPSC has not asked a question on trends. They have not asked a question on trend. Sir, what do you mean by trend? A question like this will be asked. In the last 5 years, fiscal deficit of Government of India has consistently increased. Statement 1. Statement 2. In the last 5 years, the revenue deficit of Government of India has consistently increased. Second statement. These are called as trend-based questions. Where do you get this trend-based question data? Simple. Whenever you have watched, let's say, economic survey videos or let's say budget videos, generally these kinds of graphs are used by people who are explaining them. You don't have to by heart. You just need to observe. Just need to observe. Right? So these are some of the things that I wanted to discuss with you people to provide you with a strategy to prepare Indian economy for Civil Services Preliminary examination. Just to put everything in nutshell, after which I'll start taking your questions. These are the things which you are supposed to do. These are the do's. 1. Focus on certain important chapters because most of the questions have come from these chapters. Study the static portion carefully plus current affairs. Point number 1. Second point, try to make mind maps on these chapters, including static as well as the dynamic portion. It will help you in revising this much faster. Point number 3, do's. Current affairs at least last 12 months. Simple. Current affairs from at least last 12 months. Fourth point, under do's, when you're reading current affairs, if you come across something related to international organizations such as World Trade Organization or let's say World Bank or IMF, focus on it. Why? UPSC tends to ask a question on that. Second within this, committees. Any committee related to these topics which has appeared in the last 1 year, try to focus on it. Questions have been asked, they will continue to ask it. Third, schemes. Do not by heart every scheme not relevant for services now. Only those schemes which have appeared in the last 1 year and within that also in which year it has been introduced, which is the nodal authority, is it a central sector, centrally sponsored, and what are the objectives. These are some of the things. In addition to this, previous year questions, glance and solve question papers. These are the things that you are supposed to do. What are the don'ts? 1. Do not read a new book now, especially for static portion. Please don't do that. You will not be able to complete it. And don't take it as a challenge and waste your time. Second, even if you have read one book earlier, don't read that book from the first page to last page now. It is not necessary. It is not required. Third, do not by heart every data that you come across in the Indian economy. UPSC is not favorite or it doesn't ask questions on data like this. Done. So these are some of the do's and some of the don'ts. Now let me take up questions from your side and to best of my knowledge or ability, try to address your questions. Question number 1. Do we need to look into FDI and FPI? FDI and FPI, strictly speaking, will come under the concept of investment. It will come under the concept of investment. But it is so tricky that you can even include FDI and FPI under the concept of international trade or international economics. So my recommendation, please look into it. Please look into it. Questions have been asked by UPSC earlier and it is important. They will ask you questions on that. Second, so please give chapter examples for prelims and mains. I've told you this. This is the list. This is basically the list. The GDP, inflation, fiscal policy, monetary policy, international economics, agriculture sector. These would be my favorite areas for prelims. And these are no way, again understand this, this doesn't mean that these are not relevant for mains. Now the target is prelims. So these are very much relevant for prelims. And chapters such as infrastructure, check how many questions on infrastructure have come in the prelims. And then look at mains, you will be surprised to know that questions have come in mains. Concepts of plans, planning, understand this. Niti Ayog. So far no question has come in the prelims. But in mains, one question has come in the last 5 years. But again, I'll be very cautious here. Most of the planning concept, you will have to reserve it for mains. For prelims, don't by heart, right? Let's say first 5-year plan, this happened, second, third, etc. like this. If there are any concepts within those plans, please by heart it. Right, sir? What do you mean by concepts within those plans? All of you, when you read about plans, you will come across a concept called as Harrod-Domer model. Questions have been asked on it. Right, top to bottom, bottom to top planning, questions have been asked. So that's why it's a very tricky area. I cannot simply say ignore completely. Concepts are there, please try to read that. Right, I'll give you one more example. Low income trap. There is one concept within 5-year plans, low income trap. UPSC can ask you that in the mains as well as in the prelims. Right, so that would be my answer for you people. NCERT is sufficient for prelims along with current affairs. If you have read NCERTs carefully, 4 NCERTs, 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th. 4 NCERTs, 9, 10, 11, 12. Along with that, if you are very comfortable with all the current affairs in the last 12 to 15 months, I would simply say you don't have to be worried. You do not have to be tensed about the Indian economy part. But having said so, if you have read about these chapters in one reference book, I would be much more comfortable. Why? I'll tell you. If you talk about, let's say, fiscal policy, 15th Finance Commission, which NCERT book do you think has a concept of 15th Finance Commission? You tell me. If you talk about taxation, NCERT book doesn't cover completely about taxation. Here and there they have given tidbits for you. So my recommendation is, if you have read, let's say, one book, right, within that particular book, these are topics you have covered once. Now revise, don't read any other book, right? It simply is waste of your time. Shall we read topic mentioned in the monthly magazine for prelims? Yes, why not? Please read those topics. Is mutual fund and ETF important for prelims? Of course, yes. Right? Mutual funds and let's say ETFs are very much relevant. Can I give you a connection? I'll give a very basic connection. If you have read the newspaper today and in the last couple of days, there is a concept of front running. There is this idea of Mr. Arshad Warsi being barred from getting access to capital market. These concepts, one or the other way, will be connected to the idea of mutual funds. These are connected to the concept of ETFs, etc. So one or the other way, you will have a connection like this. And these are important, relevant in the current affairs. How to revise budget and economic survey? Like I've basically said, whenever you go through these concepts or let's say the videos, try to make short notes on this. Use the short notes, revise those short notes. Okay? What should 5-year plans, what about 5-year plans? Is it necessary to remember all the 5-year plans? I would not say you need to remember all the 5-year plans. But let's say there are certain 5-year plans which are very much relevant. Even today, these are very much relevant. For example, earlier there was a question on which 5-year plan had the central focus of inclusive growth. Even today, that is relevant. I hope you understand. Even today, that is relevant. Some of you will ask me, sir, how do you think that is relevant? Many reports have been published in recent times which say India houses one of the highest number of poor people in the world. Don't you think in that context, is there any 5-year plan which proposes inclusive growth will be relevant? I'm pretty sure all of you have understood what I'm trying to convey here. Right, 2022, we have completed, we have crossed more than 30 years of LPG reforms. They could ask you which 5-year plans basically propose the idea of LPG reforms. Right, so there are multiple 5-year plans, at least the central themes you remember it, central points you remember. Can we refer to BYJU'S crash course of 2022 for the revision again? Why not? Why not? The whole idea that we are doing all this much more elaborative exercise is that you should have access to the concepts. You should get revised along with us. That is, the revision should happen along with us. Is current affairs based economic preparation enough for prelims? I would simply recommend against it. I hope you understand. I would simply recommend against it. For those of you, what the question simply says is, sir, I will read current affairs concept, and whenever current affairs concept I am reading, I will read static portion along with it. The danger of that is, you will not know how much to read, right? How much to cover, etc. That's a danger of it, right? So please be very careful. What I would recommend is, at least these topics, be very, very comfortable. Comfortable in the sense, sure about your static portion as well as current affairs. Which NCERT book, micro or macroeconomics, is relevant for examination? Macroeconomics. Simple. Macro macroeconomics, M-A, not M-I, macroeconomics. That is relevant for examination, and even in that also, here is my pointer. Understand this, here is a hashtag. Don't read everything that is there in that NCERT book also. For example, lot of equations are provided. Lot of equations are there. Lot of graphs are provided. Do you need to by heart all those graphs and equations for exams? Absolutely no. Please do not waste your time. Please do not waste your time. Okay. Could you please provide mind maps? Again, that is your exercise. I've basically given you a path, right? I cannot walk on your behalf because ultimately you are the one who is going to write the exams, my dear. Practice. You should be able to find out which is relevant, which is not relevant, etc. Based on that, you prepare. Have they covered dynamic part in BYJU'S test series? Of course, yes. Any test series that you appear for, of course, yes, they would have to cover the dynamic part as well as the static part. How do you call a series as a test series if you are not going to cover the dynamic aspect related to those papers? Sir, what about the financial market? It is in the news for the past 12 months. It is in the news for the last 12 months. Of course, yes. You will have to read a lot of concepts related to financial market. If I want to just give you certain concepts, in the last couple of days, or let's say today's newspaper, have you not come across a concept of pump and dump? Please check. If you have not seen the videos or not read the newspaper, etc., you are living in a cave, then open up your mobile. There is the concept of pump and dump related to financial market. 2 or 3 days ago, there was a concept of front running related to financial market. Couple of days ago, for many days continuously, there was a discussion about co-location, financial market, short selling, financial market. So just on the top of mind, at the top of my mind, I've given you 4 concepts which are relevant to financial market in the last 1 week. Now you can search any book. This is my grievance against the books. I hope you understand. Again, this is an illogical grievance as well. The grievance against the books is these kind of concepts will appear in the newspaper. All the books will not carry information about it. In that case, what will you do? I hope you understand. In that case, what will you do? Can you write on the OMR sheet out of syllabus? Can you write that statement? They will reject your OMR sheet first thing. So please understand this very carefully. You will have to read, understand those concepts. Okay. How to cover agriculture point for economics? What I would recommend is, in the last 1 year, what has appeared in the agriculture sector, focus on it. For example, let me take one aspect of agriculture sector. MSP, minimum support price. Generally important. I hope you understand. Generally, it is important. But in the recent times, in the last 1 year, there have been so many points of discussion regarding MSP. So again, there is a possibility of question being asked on the concept of MSP itself. It could be the methodology, A2 plus FL, C2 methodology, etc. Or what parameters are taken by CACP to finalize the recommendation to Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. Right? For how many crops MSP is announced, etc. Right? So argument is very simple here. If you talk about agriculture sector, this is one example. Can I give you one more example related to agriculture sector? Food security issue. Within food security issue, one nation, one ration card. All the states in India have implemented one nation, one ration card. They can ask you which was the last state to implement ONRC, which is the nodal agency to implement one nation, one ration card, etc. Right? Or they can ask you Mera Ration app. There is an app related to this which is famously referred to as Mera Ration app. They can ask you on that. Or else let me give you one more example related to agriculture, again food security issue. Food Corporation of India is now conducting open market sales. I'm pretty sure all of you have come across this. Open market sales. They can ask you what is the open market sales. What do you mean by that? Right, for what crops it is conducted? Is FCI coming under this ministry or that ministry? Is FCI a statutory body or a constitutional body? What could be the impact of open market sales? etc. like this. Right, so these are, right, I hope you understand, these are the kind of areas that you will have to look into whenever you're reading current affairs related to Indian economy. Right, and UPSC does it. UPSC actually does this. Students will be confused. Suddenly a statement appears, FCI is a statutory body. You think it is no way connected to current affairs, but it is connected to current affairs itself. That's the reason, again, I'll reiterate it. Read these concepts very carefully from the static source, then consolidate all of this with the dynamic source. Consolidate, right? Keep on adding more and more information, right, from let's say newspapers, magazines, current affairs, videos, etc., etc., etc. Okay, done. So these are the important things that I wanted to discuss with you people, basically to provide a strategy for you to prepare for Indian economy. And this is, again, do not apply this strategy for mains. It will be flawed strategy, right? For mains, it's a different ball game altogether. Apply this strategy for Civil Services Preliminary examination. So I hope this will help you people. You will at least adopt some of the techniques that I've told you, right, in this strategy, and it will help you in clearing the Civil Services Preliminary examination. Before I wind up, just make sure that you will hit the subscribe button and hit the notification button, so that subsequently, as and when we keep on doing these sessions, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, etc., or even other videos that we upload, you will get the notification for it. And apart from this, please download the BYJU'S Exam Prep app also, because some of the components of this program, you will be able to access it only through the app. Right, so that's it from my side. Take care, good night, and all the best for your exams.